So we're going to have an update on those pandemic programs. We're going to take your questions and also have a poll. So let's start with the poll. Let's go just a couple little questions that are kind of related to today's topic of being HR. And our first question is going to be related to if you've had an employee or employees that have used the sick and family leave related to COVID-19. So again, the question is going to be, have you had an employee or employees use the sick and family leave as it relates to COVID-19? And with that, we do have comparing this to our national poll, to what information we received from the NFIB, the National Federation of Independent Business, and their particular polls, and kind of see how we rate compared to nationally on the kind of the exposure that we've had with Sick and Family Leave Act related to COVID. So we do have about 69% that have participated, and now it jumps over 70. So we're going to particularly close this part of the poll and share the results with you. And 63% of you say no, that you have not had an employee or employees that have had to use the Sick and Family Leave Act related to COVID. Well, that's good. That is actually excellent. 63% no compared to 37% yes. On a national level, we're looking at 55% answered that yes. So, and 45 no. So quite a bit of difference with the national, with us having less of an exposure apparently to that particular issue. So a related question is going to be, has your business claimed the federal COVID-19 sick and family leave tax credit, also called the FFCRA? So again, we'll launch this poll, and it's going to be on, has your business claimed the federal COVID sick and family leave tax credit, FFCRA? Simple yes or no is all we want. I will tell you that it's basically a third to two-thirds on the NFIB poll, with a third of them saying yes and two-thirds of the respondents saying no. Got about 67% of you participating at this point. Look for that nudge to get over 70, and then actually in this poll and share the results that we'll do with 67% of you. And a whopping 84% no, you have not claimed the federal COVID sick and family leave tax credit or had employees. So we're running substantially lower here in the Central California region, here in downtown Bakersfield and throughout our region. We're running considerably lower than we're seeing on a national level, which is having a higher penetration of, yes, they have had employees take a leave, and they've also claimed the tax credit associated with that leave. Okay. Well, that's outstanding to know. And there you see the actual results, 84% to 16%. And we are done. We are done polling. So actually, now that we're done polling, what we'll do is we'll move on to our next slide, and that's going to be our status and action items of key pandemic relief. Something that we have done fairly regularly through, well, I guess regularly, like every Wednesday for the last 92 weeks, I guess would be a better response. So we'll talk a little bit about kind of what's going on with some of the programs that are still open. We had a big EIDL reach last week and discussed a lot about EIDL. Not going to get into a lot of that now, other to say that that is available on demand if you really need that. And we'll talk a little bit about it because it is ending at the end of the month. But it's your EIDL loan and your targeted EIDL and supplemental that closed 12/31. And so those are the ones that kind of people are looking at. And also the employee retention tax credit. Even though the program ended on 9/30, retroactively, you can go back and you can use your federal employment tax filings on form 941. Actually, if you use an amended form, that would be the 941X, and you can go back and still claim retroactively that credit if you qualify for it. So a lot of people are still using that particular program. It's a nice program, getting a lot of good results for a lot of businesses. There is a significant time lag in the ERC. So before you get the money, it's going to go, and can be done either two ways. You can actually apply to get it refunded to you, or you can get it in the form of a tax credit on your income tax return, however you file on Schedule C, Schedule Form 1040, Schedule C, 1065, or 1120 for corporations. Still, I think, have something going with the City of Bakersfield Restart the Loan program. We encourage you to contact Access Plus Capital or the Women's Business Center, who's doing a lot of work in that area. The California Relief Grant program is closed. We still have people that have been checking emails, and they're actually finding emails, and in some cases they're getting those funded. So if you applied, never heard back, look through everybody's email that you could have possibly used, any email account where that could be located. The California Micro Grant Program it's likely coming, and it's likely coming in late January. Throughout Kern County, it will be for $2,500. The key aspects are, number one, in 2019, you needed to file a tax return that showed less than $50,000 of revenue. And there are a few other eligibility issues, but that's one of the key ones. Also, if you received the California Relief Grant, if you got $5,000 through that program, you cannot get both of these two. So this micro grant program is available for those who were unable to access the California Relief Grant for a variety of different reasons and qualify. And that will be going on throughout 2022 throughout Kern County. PPP Forgiveness is open. It's due 10 months from the end of the covered period. We got a few questions about, last time we talked about this in a little detail, about those of you who might have initiated it through an online source such as Cabbage. And Cabbage was one of the slower ones to open up the actual forgiveness portal or use the forgiveness portal, or however they're doing it. But if you have one of theirs, you could have already likely received an invoice, because if it's 10 months from the end of the covered period, you do start repaying back that PPP forgiveness. And I understand I'm talking about something that 75% of you who received a PPP first or second draw have already got forgiveness on it. But there are still those 25% that are out there that are still waiting to be done, and we're looking to move that particular direction. So we'll keep you appraised. Again, if you, we have a number of past expert topics that are available on demand at our on-demand YouTube channel, CSUB SBDC. In-depth problems with EIDL. If you're having a problem with your EIDL, you can go back to last week's on 12/8. If you want more information on if you still are maybe on the fence about maybe applying for EIDL before the end of the year, there's some great reasons too, and some reasons why you might not want to on our September 22nd webinar with Keith Bryce, the 80th that we did. The employee retention credit, and I know I say earned about every single time, but it is the employee retention credit. And that was back on October 27th. We had some other COVID issues that we had talked about in September 1st, HR issues that we're doing also today. But there's more ways to find employees, and PPP forgiveness are a couple of those that are back there. So on that PPP forgiveness, again, the key thing here is even if you have gone beyond the particular windows and timeframes here, you still can get PPP forgiveness. Even if you've been mailed a invoice to start paying on it, you can still get that. But those are your timelines right there. And there you have a variety of 3 different forms that you can use, from extremely detailed to the 3508S, which is a very short form for those that received less than $150,000. So a lot of ways to get into the forgiveness aspect. On the EIDL front, you can, this was what we learned last week, you can request assistance from the Central California District Office, very similar to the SBDC, Central California region. that covers 14 counties across Central California. You can email the Fresno District SBA office at fresno@sba.gov. And this is if you have assistance for your EIDL, if you have some type of EIDL headache that you're experiencing and you can't get it resolved and you've called the toll-free number and the call center and haven't been able to get it, send it to Fresno@sba.gov and include your business name, your borrower's name, your address, your 10-digit EIDL application number, and a phone number that you can be reached at. If you still have been turned down and hadn't requested a reconsideration, there is the email address to request reconsideration, pdrecons@sba.gov. You want to know why you were declined before you try to address why they should change their mind. So that's a key aspect of it. Find out what you were addressed and look at some of the issues that have gone on what can possibly change that. Oftentimes it is something as little as your business address on your tax return doesn't match your physical location that you have on your application and so forth. So a lot of reasons on why you could receive a decline. Still not too late to request additional funds, EIDL funds, COVID EIDL increase requests at sba.gov, or you can go into your SBA portal. A lot of people have an opportunity to slide the bar and increase funds within the portal. Some do not and need to go the other way to request it through that SBA process, which brings us now to our special guest today. And our special guest is Celeste Young-Ramos, and she's the founder of the Restaurant Success Story, a restaurant and human resource consulting firm that actually provides restaurants and managers skills to actually grow their business, maximize profit, and develop and attract highly successful and satisfied customers. The great thing, Celeste, her background, see, this is where I get to go off on my own fun part of this thing. And that's she's had such a wide background with a very dynamic chain and in so many different capacities in over 20 years experience at Denny's restaurants, on the human resource manager side of things, the franchise director side, or just working between those restaurant owners and providing them ideas on getting profitable. We're excited here at the SBDC because I do have an announcement. We are bringing Celeste Young-Ramos on board in 2022 as one of our consultants, one of our advising team members. And therefore, those of you out there will be able to schedule an appointment with her and meet with her for no fee at all. So a great resource coming, and we're very excited to have her on board. She is a graduate of Brigham Young University. Celeste, it's great to have you back. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome.
Well, thank you, Kelly. And I'm so excited to be here and to also become a more permanent fixture on the team. So welcome, everybody. I'm glad to be here, and I'm going to be sharing with you today some of the new HR updates. Whoops, excuse me. Trying to get over to my file. Where are we? One second. Here we go. All right. So today we're going to be going over some of the 2022 California HR updates. The government was really active even though COVID was going on. So we want to make sure that you're aware of all of the new changes that are coming into place. As Kelly mentioned, I'm Celeste Young-Ramos. I'm a food service and restaurant specialist and also human resources advisor. So today we're going to go over the changes in the state minimum wage increases. We're going to talk about some new wage theft laws that went into place, 4 or 5 miscellaneous items that impact how you manage your employees. We'll also talk about some new workplace safety regulations. And lastly, we'll close out with CalSavers retirement plan that needs to be put into place by mid-year if you have 5 or more employees. So as we go through, if you don't want to put a question in the chat, we'll have time at the end also to go over any questions you may have. So first off, we have a minimum wage increase here starting on January 1st. Minimum wage will increase to $14 per hour for employers having 25 or fewer employees, and will be at $15 per hour for the larger employees with 26 or more. So you may have to also check your local jurisdiction if your city may have a higher salary, I'm not sorry, but wage limit. Typically, that might be in a more metropolitan area. With that, every time minimum wage goes up, we also have to go back and look at our salaried employees to make sure they're meeting the guideline so that they can be exempt from breaks and overtime. And one of the requirements for that is that they must be paid at least 2 times the state minimum wage. So every time the state minimum wage goes up $1 an hour, it equates to about a $7,000 a year raise to your salaried exempt managers and supervisors. So if you have 25 or less employees, the minimum you can pay them at this time and still have those exemptions from the overtime and rest periods is going to be $11.20 a week or $58,240 a year. And for the larger employees, it'll be $1,200 a week or $62,400 a year. So that's something I would really look at. A lot of times when I'm doing audits of businesses, they'll tell me they have salaried employees, but then when I look, they don't meet this standard for the wage. So you definitely need to make sure that you are hitting that level. All right, also, I'm covering a few little ones here too, because everybody's from different businesses. There was a new legislation if you're in the garment industry that you can't pay people piece rate anymore. Everyone needs to be paid at least minimum wage, and you can still give incentivized bonuses, but you have to make sure they make at least minimum wage. Also, legislation came out regarding third-party delivery services. They were having some problems with the tipping policies, and with AB 286, they now make it unlawful for a food delivery platform to retain any portion of amounts designated as a tip or gratuity. So now whoever delivers the food is the person who should be receiving the tip or gratuity. And that's what we as consumers assume, that they were getting their tips. But I guess there has been some issues throughout the state. So now whoever delivers the food gets the tip in entirety. And if you're going through a third-party delivery company where you're ordering, but they have the option to pick up at the restaurant, then the tip there would go to the food facility. Last year, we started with AB 5 for the independent contractors, and that really kind of shook up the labor force for employers, as many people that we had as independent contractors before now had to be classified as employees because of the level of control we had as employers. And I guess there's been a lot of lobbying going on. So a few more areas of people have been removed from having to be considered employees. One of those groups is licensed manicurists and licensed subcontractors. Those people can now be independent contractors. Data aggregators and research subjects no longer need to be compensated to be exempt. Certain claims adjusters and third-party administrators in the insurance and financial industries are now exempt. And also there's an exemption for manufactured housing salespersons. So I'm not sure how many of those are out there, but so these are the 4 groups now that have been put on the exempt list. And if you have any questions about whether your employees should be independent contractors or not, you can always make an appointment with me and we can look over your situation and determine what's the best avenue to take. Now, this last year, the state also took a lot of legislative action in regard to wage theft. And now they've made it a criminal act to steal wages from employees. Before it was a misdemeanor, but now they have moved it up to a felony level. So it's now a felony if an employer with intention, so you have to blatantly do this, not like it was an error in something that you didn't understand the law or something like that, but you intentionally wrongfully withheld wages, including tips, an amount greater than $950 for one employee, or $2,350 in the aggregate form of 2 or more employees within a 12-month period. So they're now terming this grand theft, and the potential imprisonment can be up to 3 years. Also, with this law, they are saying if you have independent contractors, in regards to paying them, they're considering them employees for this law, and that entitles that they could be covered by this as well. So we really need to, be aware of how we're paying people, make sure that we pay people on time, that we don't withhold their wages and things like that, because now it could become a criminalized act. Now, back in 2011, there was a law called the Wage Theft Protection Act. So this is not a new act, but I want to bring it up because as I audit restaurants, this is one thing that I frequently don't see, particularly in the smaller independent restaurants or other businesses. And that is that employers are failing to provide the employees what they call the Notice to California Employee. And if you Google this Wage Theft Protection Act or put in Notice to California Employee, you'll be able to pull up this document. And what this document is a one-page form that gives the employee all the contact information for their employer, information about their workers' compensation carrier so that they can use that if the employer fails to file a claim for them. It also covers how much they're going to get paid, how frequently the pay period will be, and also information about the sick leave policy. So if you are have used the state sick leave policy, or you may have a local jurisdiction where they have a more stringent sick leave policy. For instance, the city of Los Angeles has a 6-day per year sick leave policy compared to the state 3-year policy. So if you have not been providing this to your employees and you do have a labor audit or a PAGA lawsuit, this could be substantial fines to you. So, and this is why I see some places where when employees don't know anything about the sick leave policy, right there, I know that they probably weren't issued this Wage and Theft Protection Act, a notice. So you'll want to look into that if that's something that you're not familiar with. And I'd be glad to go over that and provide that to you as well. Also, they expanded the enforcement rights of labor commissioners. So now if you do have any type of final citation or findings where you are charged and have to pay because of labor violations, the labor commissioner is now able to place a lien on any real property in the county in which your business is, so that they can try to collect that money from you. So they're starting to put some teeth behind some of the rules and regulations that they've set in place. Now, Kelly already mentioned about the employee retention tax credit. This quarter, we're not eligible for it here in the fourth quarter, but you still can apply for 2020 and 2021. You have up to 3 years to make the request. And in 2020, your revenues need to be down at least 50% in any quarter compared to the same quarter in 2019. Or if you had a partial closure because of a local COVID restriction. And in 2020, you could get up to $5,000 per employee for the entire year. And in 2021, your sales loss needed to be at least 20% compared to 2019. And you could request up to $7,000 per employee per quarter. So that could go as high as $28,000 per employee per year. So if you are needing assistance with that, we can look at that and give you a little bit clearer direction on knowing which quarters you're qualified for. If you are taking payroll through a national payroll company, they typically will charge you a fee to make the amendments. There are several videos on YouTube that will help you fill it out yourself, the 941X. There's very little information that you have to provide on there. You cannot count your PPP toward your the qualified wages. So if you qualify for the sales being down for a specific quarter, then you look at the labor that you paid out minus out the amounts that you received for PPP, and any of the other weeks that did not receive PPP money can be counted. It does take 4 to 6 months to get this back since we're doing an adjustment, but still money coming in is always a happy sign, right? Another change this year was in regards to non-disclosure and non-disparagement provisions in settlements, separations, and asset protection agreements. And they call this the Silence No More Act. So in 2019, the California law passed a restriction that in your non-disclosure agreements, you couldn't have a clause about confidentiality in regards to settlements involving sexual harassment or sexual discrimination, et cetera, anything sex-based, because they felt that this information needed to be shared so action could be taken if there were violations. So now with the new law that goes in effect on January 1st, they're also going to cover any type of workplace harassment or discrimination based on any of the other 16 protected classes here in California. So also employees must be able to talk about these types of issues after separation. So it needs to be, there's no, we can't ask them not to talk about it. The same I want to bring up is that we can't ask employees not to talk about wage issues or anything in the workplace really that is a violation of their rights. I know oftentimes I've seen people write up employees for talking to other employees about their wages, supposed to be confidential, but that's against the law in our state, so we have to avoid that. We cannot force people to waive any of their rights under the Fair Employment Housing Act, so saying that they can't file a complaint against the company for any type of harassment would be violating that. So if you do have non-disclosure agreements, there is new wording that has to be placed in those. So if you haven't looked at this for a while, you might want to have an attorney review your I'm a little cold in here, I'm sorry. It's making me stutter a little bit. You might want to have them look over your agreement. So you have to have a phrase that says nothing in this agreement prevents you from discussing or disclosing information about unlawful acts in the workplace, such as harassment or discrimination or any other conduct that you have reason to believe is unlawful. And in these separation agreements, there also has to be a provision that they have at least 5 days to consider the agreement and that they have the right to consult an attorney regarding the agreement. So a little bit more information there that you may need to add if your agreement doesn't already have it. So here's some information about the California Family Rights Act. Now, Kelly earlier mentioned about using it for COVID, and that was something that was available through September 30th if you had 26 or more employees. That now has ended. But there have been some changes to the California Family Rights Act, and it applies to all employers of 5 or more employees. And one of it is that you must provide family leave up to 12 weeks within a 12-month period if the employee has worked at least a year. So prior to this, used to be larger employers, but this did get moved down to 5. And this leave can be used for a person to have a birth of a child or an adoption or foster care placement of a child. It also is available to take care of immediate family members with serious illnesses, or if the employee themselves has a serious health condition. Now, they did make some changes in regards to who's considered family members. So right now, it's any family member that's a direct line, like a child, a spouse, a registered partner, a grandparent, anybody in the direct line. Cousins, aunts, and uncles are not covered. But they did not have in their parents-in-laws. And because of the length that our senior population is living, many parents of couples are now having to come home and be cared for and need assistance as well. So they did add parents-in-law before they just had the parents. And also they made a provision if you're a company of 5 to 19 that employees will now will have to go through mediation before they actually go to file a lawsuit. So that's an additional step to, stop the process from escalating to trials. Okay. There was also a couple safety workplace issues that came up, and one of them was called the Workplace Safety Enhanced at Employers with Multiple Work Sites. It's called SB 606. And this was part of the Division of Occupational Safety and Health, or CalOSHA. And they said if they've determined there's a pattern of practice of a safety violation at one work site, if that company has multiple work sites, it creates a rebuttal presumption that the same violation exists throughout the employer's enterprise. So with that presumption, what happens if they feel that this is happening at one place, and particularly if you have a written policy or procedure somewhere that says this is how we do it company-wide, they'll now be able to cite every single location that company has that has that written policy. So if the employer does not rebut the presumption, they will do a system-wide citation. So that was something new that came down recently, and it goes in effect on January 1st. Also, now there's an obligation to notify public health agencies of a COVID-19 violation. So as of October 5th, 2021, employers are required to notify local public health agencies of a COVID-19 outbreak. And it has to be 3 or more COVID-19 cases among workers at the same work site within a 14-day period. And so when that is discovered, you have to report it within 48 hours or 1 business day, whichever is later. Many health departments had local legislation about that, but now this has become a statewide requirement. Also, you're required to send a notice to all employees who were on premises at the time that this happened. Before, it used to be, you only had to notify the people who may have been exposed, but now they're requiring that you notify everyone on the work site that there has been someone in the infectious period. So they were worried that before there may have been people that, they would just look and see, oh, these people were scheduled and no one else has been there. But now they feel that, there may be other people that have come into the workplace that might not have been on a schedule, and that this would just kind of blanket everyone to know and come forward if there was some type of infection. Also in the area where there's agricultural workers during wildfire and smoke events, that kind of hits some of your areas, that AB 73 was passed. So the existing law requires California to establish a stockpile of personal protective equipment sufficient to supply essential workers for 90 days during a health emergency. They recently added wildfires as one of the health emergencies. So if you have agricultural workers, you will need to be able to have those supplies on hand. And the Division of Occupational Safety and Health is going to review their wildfire smoke training and provide that to employers that do have agricultural workers. And that training needs to be done in languages that are going to be easily understood. So you may have to have it in multiple languages. A couple things regarding distributing information and employee records. One is the state has said now that it's okay to distribute information that we normally would post in our businesses, such as our state and federal laws or our workers' compensation information. They're saying now because of COVID and the amount of people that are now also physically working from home, that they do allow you to email those items to the employees as well. You still need to have them posted in your workplace if you have a physical work site, but now it's going to be easier for you to distribute and for the employees to be able to see that information. They also said that before, personnel records only needed to be retained for 2 years, and now they're extending that up to 4 years. So you want to keep all your personnel records up for 4 years. Also, SB 93 came about, which was a recall hospitality workers. So this is effective from April 16th, 2021 through December 31st, 2024. This was passed by Governor Newsom earlier this year. And this is requiring employers that fell in larger hospitality scale businesses to bring back the employees that they laid off first and give them notice whenever a job is posted that they had in the past. They have to give a 5-day notice whenever those jobs come available. So this is going to cover hotels, private clubs, large scale event centers like places where you'd buy ticketed seating, airport service providers, including restaurants, janitorial, maintenance, and security services provided in commercial buildings. So, so the qualified former employees would be those that held the same or similar position as the one in which the employer is now hiring, were employed for 6+ months in the 2019 calendar and working at least 2 hours per week, and were separated because of COVID-19. So they must be given a written notice within 5 days of establishing the position. So this will need to be a practice if you are in any of these types of businesses all the way through 2024. And then that brings us to the CalSavers retirement program. CalSavers is available to California workers whose employers don't offer a workplace retirement plan. This is to self-employed individuals and any others that want to save extra. So they recognize that the retirement of many people were in jeopardy because there was not enough savings going on. So they were trying to institute this throughout for all employers that have 5 or more employees. So they'll be able to contribute to an individual retirement account that belongs to them. The employers that have 5 or more employees that don't offer the plan will register and have access to this platform, and I'll give you a little bit more information about that. It's going to be pretty easy to facilitate and enroll. You'll serve a very limited role. What you'll do is you'll need to go and sign up for the program, and then you'll need to submit, add and subtract employees from the roster, and make sure that their contributions are submitted through a payroll deduction. So the employees will be able to say, I'd like to have up to 5% as a payroll deduction. You should be able to just report that to your payroll company, and they'll automatically set up the deduction. There aren't any fees, and you don't have to make any contributions or matches if you're using the CalSavers plan. And the CalSavers people will be administering it, and they will be taking care of all the questions, providing the different options that the employees can choose for their retirement funding. And so they're trying to limit the cost, and also how much effort that you have to put into this plan. And not all employees have to take the plan either. So they can decide not to take the options. So, so only employees that have 5 or more employees will have to join. Registering will take just a few minutes. You'll need your company's federal employer tax identification number and a CalSavers access code, which they'll send to you. When you register, you'll submit information for each eligible employee. This will begin the automatic enrollment process, and then the employees will have 30 days to decide to participate or opt out. And if they do not make a selection, they will be auto-enrolled in the program. Now, I'm not sure if they get auto-enrolled, what's the time period they have to stay in before they can be taken out. But if they do have to take some action, so you may need to help them in that aspect when they first get the notices from CalSavers, so that they just don't, do anything at all and get stuck in that. After you add an employee information and the 30-day opt-out period begins, you'll begin facilitating payroll deductions each payroll period through bank transfer. And these deductions will be added to the employee's account and invested according to their selections. This money will follow them from that employer to the, they'll be set up as a state fund. So no matter what employer they're at, they won't lose it when they leave an employer. So there were some certain deadlines to sign up. The first one is if your company was 100 or more, you had to sign up by September 30th, 2020. They also had the deadline for 50 employees or more, June 30th of this year, 2021. And lastly, any other employers that have not signed up need to sign up by June 30th, 2022. So there is a fine if you don't have people signed up. I believe it's a $250 fine if they notify you that you have employees that have not enrolled. And if you fail to correct that, it'll escalate to a $600 per employee fine. Okay, employees can opt out and back in at any time, it says. The Savers account is a Roth IRA, so it's going to be an after-tax contribution. They can also change it to a traditional IRA. Default savings is 5% of gross pay. They can change that at any time. It stays with them when they leave the workplace, and they can manage their account online by phone or using the CalSavers mobile app, so you won't have to be involved in providing any information about those plans. You'll just direct them to that number. And lastly, just a reminder about harassment prevention training, California SB 1343. So this passed back, I think, in 2018, and employers must provide sexual harassment training as follows. And these are employers of 5 or more employees. 1 hour for employees and 2 hours for supervisors. The training must occur within 6 months of being hired, or if they get promoted to manager and they've had employee training, they have to take that additional extra hour for the supervisor training within 6 months as well. And then after that, training will be every 2 years once they receive the initial training. In the training, it'll cover harassment prevention, bullying, and implicit bias. So a lot of people are calling it sexual harassment training, but it's really covering any type of unlawful behavior, bullying, discrimination based on race, or any other one of our protected classes. So I know people have asked, are they giving us a reprieve because of COVID? And the answer is no. So once you take the training, you'll want to retain the certificate with proof of training. And like any good business owner, you know, people need to be frequently educated on this topic, because you're always having new people coming aboard and people coming from different states or even countries where regulations aren't as strict. So I would recommend that you talk about the subject at meetings that you may have. I know I always had a policy in the stores that I operated that every February, because it was the month of love, we would pass out our harassment prevention and discrimination policy. And that is a requirement of all employers to have that policy and provide it no matter what size you are. Okay, so those are all of the changes that has come aboard for 2022. I think we'll go to questions and chats here. So I'll start out with the chats first. Let's see here. Can we get a copy? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'll read them to you.
Thank you.
Worked hard for a while, so.
Okay.
And, you know, you've worked hard, and obviously the California state legislatures worked pretty hard.
They sure did.
The good, bad, or indifferent laws.
Right.
Depending on your perspective, of course. So, wow, fantastic information. So let me start with this one in the chat, and it is, what if the employee wants the employer to send in their opt-out notice to CalSavers?
Well, that needs to be done by the employee, and they can do that on the website, or there probably will be another method for them to send it in if they don't have internet access, but it won't be the employer's responsibility. It'll be the employee's responsibility to do that.
Perfect. I believe you were talking about EB5 at the time, and the question is, are real estate agents considered independent contractors under EB5?
Well, it's going to depend on how much control the real estate office has over your work. If, you know, they're requiring you to wear a certain uniform to do the work only in the office, they supply all the tools. They also have you do certain specific forms that are company-wide, have you go to employee meetings, then you could possibly be considered an employee. But you have to really look at that on a one-on-one basis. So if you would like to make an appointment with me, I would love to go over it with you for your company.
The next question has to do with CalSavers, since we were just there. I'll go with this one. Could you once again go over the deadlines to
sure.
CalSavers?
The deadline, let me go put the slide back up. The deadline is right here. I think you can still see, yep. So for, if you had 50 or more employees, you were supposed to have this done by June 30th of this year. Now, the last deadline is going to be in 2022. June 30th will be the deadline. So if you have 5 or more employees, you need to definitely be signed up by that point. I don't know what the grace period is for not doing it on a timely basis. If you are in the larger groups, I would make contact with them as soon as possible if you are non-compliant with that. But as you know, there'll probably be a whole bunch of people waiting for the last moment to do it. It's okay to go ahead and get it done, you know, anytime starting now. Whenever, you know, just choose a time that's convenient that would work out good for you. You will need to talk with your payroll about it. And if you're like doing your own QuickBooks and you may be the one that's having to then, you'll have to probably personally send that information in to make sure it gets started.
Okay, great. Well, there's the, can I get access to your slides? And so I'll ask you, Celeste, can you provide the slides to some attendees?
Sure, if you would like to, I'll put my email in the chat here. If you would like to get the slides, you can always email me, info@restaurantsuccesscenter.com.
And we will include an email with the links like we often do. And that will also include a recording of today's webinar and many of the links that we talked about during the presentation. So that will be also sent out to you. And that someone did ask for your contact information. And, you know, like I had mentioned earlier, we will be bringing Celeste into, we're very excited to have her join our CSUB team of consultants and advisors. That'll happen sometime in early January. So if you want to talk to Celeste on a matter, it's between you and Celeste right now. After that point, though, you can just go to our website and sign up for SBDC services. And while you're signing up, do mention that you would like to be assigned to Celeste. Either you have a restaurant or HR type issue you want to address with her.
Definitely.
So I think I got that covered. On the ERC, the question is, how do you calculate the number of employees if you have both full and part-time employees?
Well, for the employee retention credit, you don't have to calculate full or part-time employees. You just have to look at how much wages were paid out for each employee. And you can claim, you know, depending on the year, 2020 was up to 50% of their wages up to $10,000. So you could claim $5,000 per employee for the entire 2020 calendar year. 2021, you could claim up to 70% of $10,000 in wages, or $7,000 per quarter. So it didn't matter whether they were a full or a part-time employee. It was just that they were employees. And that includes S corporations. So I'm seeing sometimes owners that are getting paid a paycheck. You're also eligible for this. So you want to take advantage of that. Any other questions? Or I'm missing the sound all of a sudden. Okay, question was, I'm going to say it because I don't know if I can't hear Kelly ask the question, but the question is, are owners considered employees if you receive a paycheck? Yes, you are. So if you are an S employee, you would be able to take advantage of that credit. And if you need any help in determining what, you know, if you're eligible, I'd be glad to help you with that. Celeste just answered my question about 5 or more employees, but what about sole proprietorships? If this is in regards to the, I guess if you could let us know which part you're talking about. Usually, whether you're a sole proprietor or not doesn't make any difference in regards to any of the laws that are 5 or more employees. Can you be exempt from doing the retirement plan? No, you can't be exempt, but you can opt out if you don't want to do as an individual. Like if you're an S corporation or you have an employee, they can opt out. But you can't, if you have 5 or more employees, you are required to offer the retirement information to the employees. And if you already have a retirement program for your company, you don't have to change over to CalSavers. You can continue on with what you already had in place.
Okay, well, great.
All right. Well, thank you.
Fantastic.
Great
Right
questions,
about on
everyone.
time. We're looking about 12:59. So fantastic as always, Celeste. Thank you so much for joining.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Week with number 93 in this series of managing your small business beyond the pandemic. Our special guest will be Tiffany Phillips, and we will be talking about plan for your social media for 2022 and beyond. So anyway, any last words you'd like to say, Celeste?
No, thank you very much for having me. And I look forward to helping support your team next year and making sure everyone's compliant so we can save all those profits that we make.
Sounds like a good plan to me. Okay, well, for Celeste Young-Ramos, I'm Kelly Bearden, and for also our producer, Maureen Busher-Dang. We will be back next week, and have a great week, and we'll see you then. Goodbye,
All right.
everybody.
Happy New Year.